Welcome to the Schmidt List, the podcast for people dedicated to managing successful projects, developing impactful products, and building engaged teams. And now, here's your host, Kurt Schmidt.
Welcome, guys. Welcome, Joe. Welcome, Mike. How are you?
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yep.
So you're at Ostra.
Yes.
Tell me about Ostra. What is it?
Ostra is a cybersecurity or managed security solution provider for small to medium-sized businesses.
Okay.
Our purpose is to bring the technology that the Fortune 50, Fortune 10 companies deploy in their corporate environments to in a scalable and a cost-effective way to a small, medium-sized business that can't afford it or has to leverage consumer solutions.
Got it. And so how did you get into that? Were you always been a security guy?
No, I haven't. Actually, my background is more from a project management, kind of leadership, a lot of infrastructure type programs and deployments. I got into some security stuff when I was at United Health Group, and then had a lot of opportunity to lead IT organizations, drive security programs globally for them. Did a lot of traveling, talk about India. I traveled to there, Philippines, and all over. And what really started to shift was wanting to get out of the large corporate America and get into doing something different. And I felt I had more impact. I had a lot of friends who are small to medium-sized business owners, manufacturing, mechanical engineering, that were having data breaches. And, we were together at Deer Camp one, fall in Wisconsin, and they were starting to talk about ransomware events that they were having, and there's no recourse or no opportunity for them. And knowing full well that there's these solutions, this technology that can be more preventative, the biggest upswing is the resources and the costs associated with deploying it. But knowing how to put all that stuff together and scale it so a small business can afford it, that's really the biggest thing, is having it in that. This is really where it came from, is to be able to, we talk a lot about being service focused and helping our customers. And that's where, inherently, in my heart is customer service focus, wanting to make sure that our clients, our customers have the best experience and they don't get, lost in, a regular IT organization. So,
and it seems these days when it comes to security that there's either you do it yourself or it's like costs millions of dollars.
Correct.
Like there's not really, what you're explaining sounds like a middle ground.
Correct.
Where I can focus on certain areas, not just like hit it with a sledgehammer, right?
Yep, exactly. And the example I was giving somebody the other day is, my wife would attest to this. In our old house, we didn't have trim on the baseboards or the doors for 5 years, and it got put on 1 month before we sold the house. And as a DIYer in home remodeling, I'm really good at so much, and that's the same thought process with these business owners. When they get into DIY, they know so to a point, and because their purpose is to get revenue for their business, to solve the problem that they're solving for their clients and customers, and being able to have a good IT or security partner that can come in and provide that fill those gaps for them, just like us hiring contractors to put trim on our house.
Yeah, sure. So do you feel that this is something people let go for a long time before they address it? It's not a lot of people showing up to you and before they need it, right?
No, there's an apathy. I feel that's the strongest piece, that it's not going to happen to me, or I don't have any credit card information, or I don't have any personal idea. I don't do healthcare. I don't do finances. I'm not in that industry that is going. I'm not Equifax. I'm not going to.
I'm not a Target. I don't have a.
Right. Exactly. I'm not a Target. I'm not a Home Depot. I'm not anything. But what we constantly see and hear about is, and everybody's gotten them, that your company that you work with or partner that sent you an email saying our email was hacked. Please ignore this contract that was sent over. We still see all of that stuff, and what we're noticing in the industry, or we're seeing in the industry, is that there's there's a shift from the large organizations that have all of the millions to invest in the resources. There's a shift into these small, medium-sized businesses that it's easy to go to 1,000 businesses and ask for $30,000 in Bitcoin. And now you have $30 million in offshore Bitcoin. And so they're an easier target. There's a less impact. But if,
it's
quantity, not the huge volumes of, how much money can we get from Equifax? Because Equifax isn't going to pay. They're going to spend the $150 million to pay all the fines that come with it, but then they're short up.
Right. They're not going to go up to the ransom stuff.
Correct.
I mean, this happened to like the city of Baltimore,
multiple times. Yep.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it's not just small businesses, right?
No, municipalities as well. The city of Atlanta and all of the municipalities or the parishes in Louisiana, school districts are targets now too. So we're seeing it. It's campaigns.
Anything that's an organization.
Yeah.
They're either targeted and or they're just bots out on the internet knocking on every door and window trying to get in.
Got it. So it's not always just a human sitting there targeting you.
No.
They're putting out phishing.
Right.
Phishing.
Right. They're agile methodologies. I mean, all that typical blockchain. They have all that stuff. They're automating it.
Yep.
It's becoming a crime. It's a true crime. And we have all the cyber insurance stuff that's out. I mean, there's just so much that is out there that's causing more and more of the churn and the opportunity for the crime to be successful.
So let's get your advice I want to talk scale first, right? So let's say I'm a side hustler or I'm a startup. Maybe it's just me and a couple of folks that are getting started. I mean, when should we be starting thinking about security as part of our business?
So it goes into, I would say, a phase mentality. Okay. So it's still the biggest email or the biggest compromise is email. Okay. The biggest compromise for an attack or a breach
comes from email.
From email. There's 280 billion messages that are sent daily, and over 90% of them are malicious. So 8% of worldwide email is only valid. so that's the biggest one, and then an endpoint protection on your device, Mac, Windows, Linux, having some, because we're seeing a lot of Mac viruses now and a lot of Chrome, Internet Explorer, all stuff that's in the news that we're seeing constantly. We're seeing more and more of these vulnerabilities, and they're all on the endpoints. So having a good endpoint agent, antivirus or endpoint security, and then also having that email, some type of email protection or awareness. That's a really big thing too, is going out to, there's a lot of free solutions that are out there that you can go leverage to learn how to identify malicious emails, how to look at various content, sending information, all of that. So education will get the most out of it, because there's still, nobody's 100% in this industry.
Sure.
And there's always that 1% or percentage that stuff will get through.
Yep.
And the last line of defense is the educated individual that's not
can recognize that stuff.
Yes, correct. And because we've seen some very targeted spear phishing, attempts towards some of our clients that are very sophisticated and looking at, sales opportunities. A new sales box gets created, email inbox, and a sales opportunity comes in, and it's a new contract, and it's a Dropbox contract. That's malicious. So they get pretty sophisticated.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, we've gotten that before via email, where somebody's pretended to be me sending one of the employees like a targeted message or whatever. And luckily we have Slack, so they were just like, "Hey, did you send this email?"
Right. Right.
And that worked out just fine. We got around that one.
Yeah. Kind of the secret, the gift card ones where you say,
that's what it was. It was a gift card one.
Yeah. Are you sure you want to do that? Yeah. We've had people go out and buy gift cards.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, people love gift cards.
Yeah,
they're just looking for an excuse to do it. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about, then you said a phased approach. So let's say I'm a little bigger. Maybe I've got, 20, 50 employees, and now I'm starting to build kind of some data sets. I've got maybe not necessarily an ERP system, but I'm using like QuickBooks and all these things. I'm running like a more legitimate business. What's that next level of security that I should be looking at?
Yeah. It really, what I kind of the analogy analogy I look at, you have to look at what your threat landscape is. How many doors do you have in your house? And going from the scale, you're opening up more and more doors by having more people and more cloud interaction, more endpoints. Have you made a decision on having corporate devices, or still are we bring your own devices to work? Are you looking at mobile devices and having ability to Slack or Dropbox on your mobile device? Mm-hmm. You're still, the email, having the email address, the antivirus or security. And then if you're in an office location like this, having a firewall to protect you from your devices being compromised. The TV, we all have these smart TVs in our conference rooms, and they're all talking to China.
Sure.
They're all talking to China. And so
what are they saying to China?
Yeah, they're just sending all kinds of information back and forth. Identification.
Right. Yeah. Sure.
So it's stepping into it is making some of the business and policy decisions on, do we need a mobile device management solution on our phones? If we have a subset of employees and they're all using email, Dropbox, Slack on their devices, what happens if we have that employee loses their phone? Mm-hmm. Or we lose a sales team? Do we want to remove the data off of that phone, or wipe the device for the employee if it gets lost? So talking about a solution there, when you talk about the BYOD devices versus company-owned devices, same thing. Is how do you want to turn the dial up from a business? There's always this line of security as well as user experience. Our posture is to come in with a little bit more aggressive security posture and then dial back to get to the user experience. Mm-hmm. But in that case, when getting a firewall for your office location, not relying on the cable provider's firewall, or at least resetting passwords on it, because they all come with default passwords, and
sure.
the Wi-Fi, and making sure that you're not allowing strangers in the hotel or in the office lobby to hop on your Wi-Fi. That type of stuff, kind of dialing in that security. The email protection, again, is covering everybody in the office, and more moving on from training to an actual solution. Because, as you grow, it's, how many people can you convince not to, buy gift cards for you? It's, right. There'll be 2 or 3 that want to impress you and do that. Sure. So it's that type of stuff as you grow.
Yeah, right. Like you said, education, right? And is that something that you do at Ostra? Do you do some of those things where you come in and do like company education efforts and things like that?
Yeah, we do some. Our focus mainly is on the preventative side and putting in the tools and the solutions. We've done some webinars. We've done some meet and greets. Come in and sit down. We do a best practices. What's going on in the industry? That type of stuff. Mm-hmm. We see a lot. Towards the end of the year, there's a huge influx of DocuSign impersonations. Everybody's trying to get contracts signed for the next year. Right. So they swing up, and so it's educating. We don't do formalized training where we come on and walk through that, but we do phishing simulations. We can do some light, vulnerability assessment, scanning, that type of stuff. But our focus, we defer to partners at that point who are more entrenched in, and that is their single focus on, consistent ongoing training or consistent penetration type testing.
Sure. And so do you start normally with an audit? Is that how you kind of come in?
Yeah.
And say, here's your vulnerability on a rating of 1 to 10. Is it that simple, or how does that work?
No, usually today, most of our customers have come in from referrals.
Sure.
And also, knowing that they need something, they've had a data breach and they want to get their stuff shored up. So, but we talk about that. We implement our tools, and then part of our solution is we have a security incident event monitoring. So all of our tools feed into that. So we have the forensics logging, SOC that is monitoring and looking at this stuff. So we know right away. And then by implementing our solution, we don't really usually need to do that initial assessment. It's more of a conversation where we talk about, what do you use for email? How are you managing your endpoints? What's your firewall like? I don't want to go in and out of the gate call somebody's baby ugly.
No.
or
it's easy to do that though.
Right.
Or you're like, oh my gosh, wow.
Right. So
it's a gaping hole in the wall.
Yeah. And so this is probably one of the struggles for the sales team is that when they bring me to the conversation, my conversation is, it's great. I want you to buy our solution and move on our product. But the bigger thing is, okay, what should you do? Do you have Macs? Okay. Well, do you have an antivirus? No. Okay. Well, here's a couple that you should look into. Mm-hmm. Ours will work, but if you don't want us, here's some more, and this is what their costs. Right. Here's what you need to do with G Suite. Here's how you need to identify these Office issues. And so I want to build more of that partnership, that relationship versus, and shake my finger at you and say, your stuff is bad. Why did you do that?
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
Right.
Yeah. So if, as a personal, like an employee, what could I be doing better to make sure that my company's more secure? Like, is there, other than the education piece, right?
If you see something, say something. If it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right.
Yeah, those public service announcements.
Yeah, exactly.
The more you know. It really, to Joe's point, is identifying the awareness, understanding what's going on, being educated about what's happening in the industry. We're all educated in what we all have our daily feeds that we read and look through, and I always throw in a few mine are mainly cybersecurity, but I throw in leadership and financial and all the other ones that I want to kind of stay in touch with. And it's staying in touch with that, and then recognizing, should I be leaving my workstation unlocked when I walk away from it, because somebody can hop on it.
Right, my password.
Right.
Post-it note.
If I go to a coffee shop, should I be using a VPN versus just leaving it wide open and do banking on it? Should I be using my kids' computer that they play Fortnite on and try to do some company work on it and download files quickly? Because all of those things, those are all little gaps along the way that could end up into something happening.
What's like? Go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say, the two big buckets are just be aware that someone's always trying to get you. Like, not to scare anybody, but anytime you're connecting to the internet, assume that you could get compromised, whether it's clicking on a link or an ad pop up or an email or an attachment, or even logging onto a Wi-Fi network, someone could come in. So just always think about, okay, how could somebody compromise what I have and how am I protected? And then the second part is pay attention to behavior patterns, right? If this isn't normal for Kurt to send me an email asking me about gift cards, maybe I should double check, right? And double check in person or on the phone, but not through the same channels that they reach back out to you. So if it seems out of sorts, and then also just be very skeptical of any connections to the internet.
That's smart. I was going to ask you, so what are the, besides the email phishing type of thing, what's another common one that when you show up to places that you see happening these days? Like, what's another common vulnerability, either that they've created themselves or that they're getting attacked with?
Email, the bigger one is just having the gaps. Usually it's a firewall that they buy a firewall, but they don't get the subscriptions for the various pieces, or they let them lapse, or
the updates and the patches.
The updates, the patches. We've also seen some, remote access they hadn't changed the main password, so it's still, admin and password.
Sure.
And you can, and then by the way, it's public. A couple of companies we worked with initially early on they gave me some credentials. You can only access this on site, and I was able to get it remotely and then provide all this information. And so and it didn't go well because we called the baby ugly.
Yeah, sure.
And so that's usually it, is just some of those common where they're not really sure that I have it plugged in, but then there's another 4 or 5 steps to lock it down or put more security around it is mainly it. But the biggest one we see is email.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing in the thread between everything you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like more so than just the tooling and the education thing, it's a kind of a culture shift around keeping security, digital security at the forefront of your mind, right?
Yep.
And is that something you find that people are struggling with?
Yes, they do. They don't.
Is it because they don't want to think about it, or what is it?
No, I think it's just that we're not used to it.
Mm-hmm. Habit.
It's habit. We're becoming more and more into it. Some of it's generational as well. So, it's becoming more and more, but that's not always true because, some of our clients are very technical savvy, but it's more of kind of the cultural shift of, this is the new now and what we need to be aware of. I think what we've all learned with Equifax is, our social security numbers, all our private information, that's totally public. Yep. Everybody's out there now. Yep. So now it's, okay, what's the next step? And how do we get into these businesses and get ransom out of them? Or how do we get the insurance carriers to pay and then give us the money? So there's all, but yeah, it's culture.
Yeah. And is that something that just through tooling and things that you've seen help shift that conversation? Yeah,
I don't think there's the technology or the tools. It's these conversations. Mm-hmm. It's this is what shifts that. The headlines, there's the headlines. There's somewhat noise sometimes. Yeah. But it's more around the personal engagement. I hate the word evangelism, but evangelism of this, where we're talking about this constantly, and we're getting people educated on the things to be aware of, mm-hmm. to think about. We see a lot about credit card skimming. Yep. But I don't ever really hear that you don't use your debit card when you go to a gas station, because your debit card will get skimmed and then that'll drain your checking account. Use your credit card because then it's insured and the credit card company will take care of you. Try to get a credit card. So there's pieces in there. It's like you hear a lot about ransomware. Okay, now what? We'll update your antivirus. No, it goes up to, if it's too good to be true, if it's free tickets to a Billie Eilish concert, and because you just posted on Facebook that you're a fan, and now you got free tickets from a local radio station you haven't really heard of, and that's a targeted spear phishing attempt. And when you start,
you actually fell for it.
Yeah, I fell for it. I like Billie Eilish. My boys are. But that kind of stuff, that awareness, is really getting this education out there, and will shift that, I feel like. So this year, there's so much, like you mentioned, there's so much more in the news in the last couple of years, thanks to things like the election. Yep. Thanks to, like you mentioned, some of the bigger companies being compromised. What would be one of the bigger things you would want people to pay attention to this year specifically? Is it more of the emails? Yeah. More just awareness. Yeah. Have the awareness like you do with everything else in your life and around this. You make sure that when you're walking down the street at night, there's nothing shady going on. It's the same thing when you're online. You're doing your shopping. You're getting the emails, the notifications. Just having that overall awareness that is this something that's true or fake, or just questioning it for a half a second. Mm-hmm. And then it'll become more and more inherent for you, and then it'll become easier over time, and then you'll just know. And I think that's you kind of go again back to the cultural thing. If you live it a bit, yes, it starts to become a new habit, right? Right. And that's what's going to help protect you. Right? Correct. I mean, I have a friend that lived in New York for a while, and he would always carry a burner wallet with him. Sure. He would have a wallet with old expired cards, right, and an old driver's license from a way old address and stuff. And if he got mugged, he would just be like, "Yeah, take my wallet, go ahead." Right. And I was like, man, that's genius, but also kind of scary. Right, exactly. It's true. And then there's kind of, that goes back to some of the comments I said about apathy. It won't happen to me. It's the same thing. Well, I'll go to New York. I won't be mugged. I'm a Midwestern boy. I'm not going to be out at night. Right, exactly. Nobody's going to think I could be, taken advantage of. And it's the same thing. I had a great aunt that got caught up in a foreign lottery scheme and lost ton of money.
Wow.
With the whole idea that she was going to have this money for her grandkids. And it's the same, if it's too good to be true. And so that type of stuff is really just that awareness.
Yeah. And I think back to what you were saying too, is there things personally I could be doing with like my social media accounts and things like that maybe, again, going back to not only, kind of protecting myself from hurting my organization, but also my family.
Right.
Well, one thing that I've learned over the last few years is everyone uses the same password that's tied to their personal email account. And that's their login for Netflix and for Spotify and for Disney Plus. Mm-hmm. And that's probably already leaked and out on the dark web. So make sure that you use a different password for everything that you have as your personal account. And you'd probably be amazed at how many personal accounts you actually have if you take the time to go through it. Just last winter, I woke up to an email that said, we've changed your password per your request on my music account. And that wasn't me. And then the next week it was my DirecTV account. So clearly someone's going after my stuff. Mm. So I finally, at this point, before I was involved with Ostra here, went and switched everything out. And it took a long time. I didn't realize I had tons of different accounts, and everyone's trying to poke and get in there. So just make sure you switch those out. That's an easy one to do.
Yeah. Credential bashing is really popular. We saw that with the Disney Plus when they came out with a lot of their accounts were compromised, and you see it with there's all the dark web tools you can look at to look up your email account and see if you've been a part of a compromise and see what your password was, and you look and what all the various the LinkedIn's, mm-hmm. the HBO, the Netflix, the Nordstrom,
the common stuff.
Yeah, and so people commonly use that same password. The other thing I would be social media, like you'd said. There's all of these surveys of, what would be your stripper name if you were, and so what are the questions? What's your mother's maiden name and what's the street you grew up on? Or what's your pet's dog's name mm-hmm. and the color of your first car? Right. So it's,
where'd you go to high school?
Where'd you go to high school? Which mm-hmm. are all the same as the personal security questions that you fill out for these. Yeah. So they're just credential harvesting mm-hmm. solutions. So avoidance of that, or, write them down on a piece of paper, or don't fill it out into the form to get your name. And so those things, the awareness of what you post on, everybody should be doing this anyway, what you post on social media and how we use those tools. That's where, and then like I mentioned before, is putting, I have two boys and they're into Fortnite, but the computer that they play Fortnite on is not the same that we do any of our personal banking, any of our stuff, because it's too easy for them to decide that they need a new download skin and for the game that they can play, and it have a payload in it that's starting to compromise the workstation. So having that diligence as well when we're doing all this online banking, all this activity and all this online, is making sure that you're not putting yourself in a compromised position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not even just your internet usage, but a lot of smart home stuff these days. Correct. Too, right? Is also something people need to be worried about.
Yeah, a lot about Ring lately. Yeah,
Ring. Yeah, poor Ring.
Yes,
they were going to solve all the world's problems.
Yeah, and you're right. There's the Alexa listens and Siri listens and Google listens and all the different smart home devices, and but the thing though that I always feel is that there's a line that I have that stuff in my house and we use it and we joke around how our phones are always listening to us talk about, and we get targeted ads, but there's we can't escape it. It's just what can we do to lessen the impact longer term? Mm-hmm. So we can't go into this fear mentality and everybody go back to paper. As much as I would love for us all to go back to paper,
that would solve a lot of problems.
It would. Everything just back to paper, and we can't do that. So we have to work ourselves in this environment where the technology is going to be prevalent, and we're going to run across these things. But the biggest thing, and I reiterated it a dozen times already, is that having the awareness of what's going on is the biggest piece.
Mm-hmm. And where are good resources for either a business or an individual? Where are places that you would suggest maybe going and watching or reading besides, the news stations?
Right. There's quite a few bloggers. There's quite a few, podcasts that are in this space that people talk about. We have some on our website where we talk about some specific targeted ones for business and some consumer. There are government organizations with the Small Business Administration that they push out a lot. There is Stay Safe Online. That is an organization that a lot of businesses, are a part of. We're a member, and then we kind of permeate security and the way to stay safe online out there. So there's various websites that you can go out to that are free tools, free, things you can implement, and, even like a policy, small policies or checklists that you should identify and go through for these things. So it's not, find a security organization, pay them tens of thousands of dollars to guide you through this. There are steps in the scale that you can get with someone that will, or get the free tools to use them.
If I want to know more about Ostra and the work that you guys do, where's
Ostra.net.
Ostra.net. Can you spell that for me?
OSTRA.net.
Is it typically the way that you work with clients is you start with audit or conversation? How does it usually work?
Yeah, we can do some free assessments, and then we move in towards a conversation, start talking about what they're looking for, where do they want to go, how much scale of security that they want, and then we have a standard package that we go in and deploy for them.
Cool. Well, Mike and Joe, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to The Schmidt List. If you want to learn more about how Foundry accelerates innovation, check out foundrymakes.com. And if you'd like me to speak about establishing a growth mindset at your conference or with your team, drop me a note at kurt@foundrymakes.com. Oh, and the next time you're on the internet, head to iTunes and leave the show a review. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, because sharing is caring. I truly appreciate you taking the time to listen to the show, and I hope you have a fantastic week.